This is part 2 of the USS Enterprise 1701 refit, or the USS Enterprise 1701-A, Deck I to U. If you haven't seen part 1, check out the link on the description box below. Let's start with Deck I to M, which is located on the interconnecting dorsal. Each deck can be accessed by the turbolifts and jetway tubes. At the dorsal decks, I and J has a small observation lounges at the four ends. Dorsal deck I to K are utilized for various engineering systems, such as a life support system, a force field generator to provide defense for the pylon, and an additional mostly battery banks for these decks. These decks also include a gravity dampening fuel generator and an air conditioning and recycling unit. The vertical impulse drive engineering core also run through these decks. Dorsal deck L houses the upper torpedo complex. 2 torpedo casing in station bay hold 10 torpedoes each, while the warheads and variable payload modules are kept in the warheads locker room. Torpedoes are lowered by crane through the well from the staging bay to the launch bay. As we take a closer look at the photon torpedo, it has a wide field sensor, an intermixed reaction chamber, a magnetic isolation pod, a guidance and targeting processor, and a propulsion and thrust vector subsystems. These torpedoes carry a small amount of matter and antimatter that could cause a massive explosion, with a small onboard engine that gives it an effective range. Torpedoes are lowered by crane through the well from the staging bay to the launch bay. At the rear, deck L, surrounding the jetway tubes, is the photon exhaust system. Also known as the torpedo deck, Deck M houses the port and starboard torpedo launch bay. The vertical impulse drive engineering core runs up between the two launch tubes. After the torpedo is lowered through the well in Deck L to the conveying assembly, it is moved forward into the launch tube and sealed within. 2 independent launch bays allow the ship to retain torpedo capability even if one bay is destroyed. Next to the launch bay A is docking port 4, while launch bay B has docking port 5.
Open the airlock.
Permission to come aboard, Captain.
Welcome, Admiral. Think you know my trainee crew? Certainly they have come to know you.
The rear portion of Deck M houses auxiliary fire control room, toilet facilities, a life support system, and an emergency battery banks. Before moving forward, I want to thank our sponsor for this video, Surfshark VPN. Surfshark VPN is a virtual private network that helps you secure and protect your digital data and your real life by putting your worries at ease. Surfshark VPN protects you and your data online. It creates encryption on your data and protects your online identity by hiding your IP address and allows you to use public Wi-Fi hotspots safely. Surfshark VPN offers one of the best coverage VPN packages out there with an unlimited number of devices you can run under one subscriptions. Platforms such as your PC, Xbox, iPhone, Android, and your Amazon devices can run Surfshark VPN. And when you're traveling and far from home, you can open the map and click on your home location and receive the same content you get back home. But it works both ways because once you get back home, you miss your time abroad. No problem. Change your virtual location and get streaming platforms from other countries, which can be a lot cheaper. And don't worry, there are more than 3,200 servers in 65 countries, so they got you covered. If you want to protect yourself online while browsing, as well as help out the channel, you can get Surfshark VPN at surfsharkdeals/Halfscreen and enter promo code Halfscreen for 83% off and 3 extra months for free. Let's start with the secondary hull. The Enterprise Warp Engineering section is on Deck N and O, where all thrust and power systems are controlled from the site. Deck N is the uppermost level of the secondary hall. At the far end of this level is the engineering computer monitoring room. Located in the center of the room and extended to many levels, both above and below the deck, is the vertical intermix chamber. Close by are several hydrogen tanks, and at the front is the Jeffrey tubes.
Check clear, number 6.
Engineering to all decks. Auxiliary power test in 3.
Space matrix restoration coils. Dilithium crystals.
I knew it.
Air supply ducts.
The transporter sensor was not activated.
At the back is the compartment holding the life support systems for the hangar bay, as well as 4 emergency battery banks. This is also the phaser control room. It has slave control of the twin phaser units, as well as 4 units mounted on the bottom of the secondary hall. The forward section of Deck O is known as main engineering, where all warp drive functions are controlled from this deck. Here, the upper end of the vertical intermix shaft branches off into the horizontal warp drive to the vertical impulse drive. The horizontal intermix shaft extends for the 145 feet afterwards, at which point it branches out and upward toward the nacelle pylons. This linear configuration has proven to be consistently cooler, cleaner, and more efficient than the previous system. 4 firing thrusters in the hydrogen tanks, as well as several emergency battery banks, flank the horizontal warp drive, with the turbo shaft running parallel with the horizontal shaft. The recent addition to the Enterprise warp engineering section is the dilithium reactor room. Deck P is the main engineering work deck. The forward section is taken up by the thruster control room, which includes the 2 reaction thruster package, as well as their hydrogen tanks. Outboard of these are the offices of the engineering department and division officers, as well as the briefing room. Between these offices are the 2 emergency battery banks. At the center are 4 engineering workshops, including the diagnostic workshop, the Petty's officers' quarters, maintenance workshop, the damage control workshop, a pair of engineers' observation lounges, and the engineers' mess. Along the side of the ships are the lifeboats. Nearest to the stern of the ship is the hangar bay, surrounded by 3 sides of the observation and control gallery, which overlook the flight deck below. The flight deck tractor beam is located right below the center of the gallery. Deck Q is usually referred to as the flight deck, although the hangar takes up only about 1/3 of the available space. At the aft end is the hangar bay complex and the landing bay for the shuttlecraft. A pair of large enclosed elevators open onto the flight deck, where it's large enough to hold several auxiliary craft. Amidship is the cargo high bay, encircled by a pair of catwalks with a bridge extending inward to the 2 freestanding turbolifts and outward to docking ports 6 and 7. 2 damage control lockers also adjoin the cargo high bay. Also in this section is the life support system for Deck N to Q and 3 emergency battery banks. The forward section of the deck is the power distribution room, which assigns and regulates power from all internal systems and monitors all power sources within the ship, which includes 2 gravity dampening fuel generators. In addition, there are 2 observation lounges and a pair of force field generators which provide defense for the secondary hull. The forward section of Deck R consists of the reflector emitter and the inorganic fabricator and defabricator. Inboard is the environmental engineering, to which all are connected to a life support system for the secondary hull. Close by are the water tanks and observation lounges. The auxiliary fusion reactor high bay and the waste defabricator, which are used to collect and recycle waste from the secondary hull downstream plumbing network. At the center is the cargo mid-bay, which is encircled by a catwalk and can hold 96 cargo containers at this level. Behind the cargo bay are the shuttle elevator and parking bay 1. Which can hold several shuttlecraft and lifeboats. Aft of the parking bay is the force field generator. Deck S is usually referred to as the cargo deck. Behind the cargo bay area are the lifeboats and the shuttle elevators, including parking bay 2, which holds several shuttlecraft, travel pods, as well as the work bees. There were several types of craft that were being used on the Enterprise, including Galileo-type shuttlecraft. Most shuttles were short-range transports, possessing only impulse drive or limited warp capabilities. The worker bee has become the workhorse of the Federation, basically an operator's cab. It can be plugged into a wide variety of specialized jobs and towing attachments. The Federation travel pod was originally designed to serve as a small transport and utilities vehicle, but is also used as an engineer's inspection car. The midship section is the cargo deck, a 3-deck high bay which on this level holds 128 containers. The bay also contains 2 cargo transporter rooms. The forward section consists of 2 observation lounges, 4 deuterium tanks, fusion reactor control, and the second fusion reactor, which can provide power for both the ship's internal systems and the impulse drive. In the event of the main reactor and primary fusion reactor failure, the secondary hull bridge is utilized when the secondary hull has been separated from the primary hull. The forward section of Deck T is taken up by 2 reaction thruster package, the hydrogen tanks, and the main reactor control room. Behind the control room is the ship's botanical garden, attendant water tanks, botanical lab, and 2 observation lounges. 12 panoramic viewports line the outer walls of the ship's botanical garden. On the vessel's center line is the tractor beam unit housing. Midships are several emergency battery banks and 2 6-person personnel transporter rooms. The Enterprise swimming pool, jacuzzi, and sun deck fills the aft third of Deck T with several lifeboats at the back of the ship. Deck U is at the bottom level of the ship and is also known as the Reactor Deck. The reactor bay holds the main matter antimatter reactor, antimatter storage bottles, and the bottom of the vertical intermixed shaft engineering core. Aft of the reactor bay is the retractable tractor beam, flanked by 2 Broussard collectors, which gather interstellar hydrogen, process it, and refill all internal hydrogen and deuterium tanks. Behind the antimatter storage bottle is the life support system for Deck RTU. Further aft is the additional emergency battery banks and the 4 water storage tanks for the swimming pool above. In this section, I want to clarify the difference between the Refit and the Enterprise 1701-A. In many ways, both ships looked identical from the design and visual standpoint. However, there are some major differences between the 2 ships. While the refit was originally the Enterprise NCC-1701 with many upgrades, it was completely destroyed in the third Star Trek movie. The Enterprise A was a fully new Constitution-class craft built from the ground up, which was later renamed to the Enterprise 01A. It was originally the USS Yorktown. In addition, there are some major design differences between the bridges. This version was originally made for the refit, while the other bridge were designed for the Enterprise A.
Spock.
Ready, Captain.
All right, Mr. Zulu. Let's see what she's got.
In addition, this enclosed version of the shuttle bay in this animation is one of the biggest differences between the Enterprise 1701 refit and the Enterprise 1701-A. The original refit version lacked the elevator walls and just have a large opening gap between the shuttle bay and the cargo bay. I hope you enjoyed this in-depth look into the Enterprise NCC-1701 refit or Enterprise A. And if you want to see more animation regarding the original Enterprise, the Enterprise D, and Voyager, check out my playlist on the right hand corner. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.
No! You'll flood the whole compartment.
He'll die. He's dead already.